Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Connor's video verdict. Slightly different location. Admittedly, we're not looking in the backdrop of a football ground behind me. I'm in a hotel room in Amsterdam. Obviously, last night was Norwich City's 1-1 draw against Alkmaar. My apologies for not bringing you a video verdict immediately after that. There was a few connectivity issues. As you will have seen if you've seen any pictures or videos or watched the game on the stream or followed along with us or whatever. It was in quite a remote location, so connectivity wasn't the best. The transport links weren't the best either, and we were relying on a lift, and by the time all of the kind of post-media sort of aspects played out, it became quite late. The lights were turned off, and it was just a decision really that it probably wouldn't have made the best video, and I would have had to have kept it really short, and there was a lot I wanted to speak about. So I've slept on it, and maybe, I don't know, it'll be a bit more considered. I've got a cup of tea there in my hotel room to dissect it over with you, because it was a really interesting evening for Norwich City, and a really interesting insight into where they are. I think it's a game, and I said this actually, if you go and watch the Team News Live video that we did, which was on location, if you want to see exactly where Norwich City were, but I felt it might be the type of game that suited them, because it was against a stronger opposition. I think the way Norwich City want to play is suited to that under David Wagner, certainly. And it was quite transitional in the way it played out. Alkmaar wanted the ball, Norwich were happy to let them have it, and there was kind of this cat and mouse game, and both teams were happy to exploit the others, because when Norwich won it back and they countered and they tried to flood the transition, they left a lot of space that Alkmaar then wanted to flood into. So the first half in particular was really competitive and quite open, and that made it a really competitive game actually, and a really open game, and a really interesting game tactically to see how Norwich coped with that. Some of their defending wasn't the best in that moment, and that was interesting given the way that we've maybe framed those discussions around Norwich City so far, and that their defensive solidity has been much improved, and the issues have been at the top end of the pitch, and that is true by and large. And I felt at points their shape was a lot better, but the goal they conceded from Ruben van Bommel, I felt, was where Yanulis gets caught just kind of ball watching or position. He gets called out, and it's a ball in behind, and Ben Gibson as well just can't turn his body enough, and it's a brilliant run from Poku to find Van Bommel. But yeah, I wouldn't say last night particularly appeased any of my issues or concerns that I have with Norwich City, and I've had with Norwich City probably for a long period of time. And I tweeted about the lack of creativity at Kaiserslautern on Saturday, and someone replied and saying, well, this is an issue that's pre-existed pre-season. This is a Norwich City team that hadn't scored a goal at home since February in the league, at that Marquinhos goal against Cardiff. This is a team that obviously won one of their last 11 matches. It's a team that obviously have really struggled, and you have to say actually it's a characteristic of David Wagner's team. You look at his Huddersfield team, I think they only scored 56 goals in that championship season when they were promoted, which I think there was only 6 teams that scored fewer goals than that in the whole division, but they only conceded 58. So you look at David Wagner's career as a coach, and the trends are that he does sort teams out defensively, he does improve teams defensively, but maybe it's that creativity point, that attacking point, that he's unable to really find a rhythm with, particularly in open play. And actually, the goal that Norwich scored last night, it was a quick free kick. Gibson over the top to Sargent. A tackle from Lewis Shoughton puts the ball into Ashley Barnes' path. It's very transitional, it's very quick, it's very quite instinctive maybe. It's not necessarily something that feels particularly sustainable, in that I look at this Norwich City team and go, I know how they're going to score a goal, and I know how they're going to score a goal consistently. And we had a good old chat about this in the podcast that you may have seen in Frankfurt, around the creativity and how it feels to me increasingly as I watch this Norwich team, it's going to be a reliant on the system to create those opportunities, rather than maybe the conventional way that we think about creativity, which is a playmaker, someone with real technical quality who can unlock defences. Emi Buendia, Wes Hoolahan, Alex Pritchard. We could go on and on and on and further back, but you get the gist of it. So that's why I think maybe this is probably why Norwich aren't feeling particularly creative at the moment. Obviously, and it's worth saying, they've got Gabi Sarra to come back. I think they'll sign a winger. I'd be absolutely shocked if they didn't. And I think it will be one, by the way. So you've got to add those elements to it. But I do just worry about the sustainability of this Norwich side from an attacking perspective, and just how sustainable that is. But actually, last game, I think for me, was kind of case in point to what I've expected. if you want a blueprint for how Norwich City are going to go to Leicester, Leeds, Southampton, maybe even away from home and play, I think we saw that. And they're okay at doing it when they are in those transitional moments and they look to counter, and you've got Jack Stacey bombing up the pitch, Yanulis supporting the attack from both sides, Josh Sargent stretching it, flood of bodies in central areas. I think they look okay at that. John Rowe in particular, really good when he has that space to manoeuvre in. Onel Hernandez likewise, even though maybe his decision making isn't quite where it needs to be. But again, to be frank, if it was, he wouldn't be playing for Norwich. So I almost feel more comfortable when Norwich are facing a better side, because it feels like it's better suited to what they want to do. Now, obviously, the flip side of that is what happens when they don't, and that low block that we saw, and that is why you look. I want to stop linking things to last season eventually, but it's all relevant because we're not seeing maybe the signs that they're evolving to the place where they need it to be. But at home, it was stodgy. When teams came and played low blocks, it was really difficult for Norwich to find answers to close them down and to find solutions to try and score goals. And at the moment, I haven't seen enough evidence that they're capable of doing that. And that, to me, concerns me, and more so about Carrow Road. And I guess that feeds into maybe the wider narrative around the fan discomfort and where we were towards the end of last season, with people feeling really frustrated and apathetic and angry, contrasting emotions. But I split that between different portions of the fan base. Not everyone, of course, but certainly some. So my fear is that if they don't find a solution to that, and we see much of what we saw at Carrow Road last season, because Norwich aren't building up any differently, really, slightly different shape in possession, but in terms of their intent and what they're trying to do and their game plan, I guess, I don't see much difference. This is kind of what David Wagner does. This is what he's always done. Likes to play that double pivot in midfield, likes to play a front two that's pretty fluid, likes to get his fullbacks high, likes to drop a central midfielder in and build up. All of those aspects that we saw last season, they're still present. There's just been little tweaks and I guess attempted improvements. We've spoken about the defensive solidity, the off-the-ball shape as well. They're building up, or have been building up, in a 3-3 kind of way. It was a 3-1-6 basically last season, and that left a massive gaping hole in the middle. There's less of that now, and that in theory should help them control transitions. We've spoken about this before. So yeah, I'm not sure that this pre-season campaign, and again, it's always skewered, and we could have an endless debate that goes on and on and on and on and on about how much you should read into pre-season, and certainly from a results aspect, you can't really, and maybe even a performance-wise, you can't. But I think you can take trends from it. You can see, as I said, little aspects or little bits where you go, oh, I like that. That's encouraging, or that's not. And I can understand, I guess, is what I'm saying, why a lot of people are feeling the way they are about Norwich City at the moment. I think, we've spoken to fans who are in Germany. We spoke to fans last night who are here in the Netherlands. We'll speak to fans who go to Austria as well. It's very difficult to find many that are feeling really positive and that positivity being based on something tangible from what they've seen. I think you speak to fans at the moment, they don't feel this squad is good enough. They don't feel that there's enough goals and creativity in it. They don't feel it's going to be capable enough to improve on last year's championship offering. And that is not a great place to be, I don't think. That being said, Norwich have been here before. I remember a lot of the similar feelings before Daniel Farke's second season when they went to win the title. I'm not saying that Norwich are going to do that, because I think there's more issues in this team. But I do think, bizarrely, it's a Norwich team that I look at and think they're better when they're playing teams that are going to get out and that want the ball. The problems for me are going to come in those games at Carrow Road, certainly on the basis of what I've seen so far, when teams want to sit and they want to be compact and they want to do to Norwich what Norwich want to do to them. That is when I see the issues arising, and that is why there's such an emphasis on possession and such an emphasis on what they're going to do with the ball to these solutions. We haven't quite seen that yet, and that is a little bit frustrating. But they are doing some stuff well. I want to emphasise that, because I know it's very doom and gloom, and there's a lot of mediocrity maybe, or feelings of mediocrity around it, but I do want to say they are doing things well. I think, for example, I thought Josh Sargent was pretty good last night. Jack Stacey, again, another really promising cameo. I'd just like to see a little bit more technically from him when he gets in some good areas. There's some excellent crosses, but maybe not as consistent as we'd like. But yeah, he's been, and I've said this before, the player of pre-season. I thought Ben Gibson had a good night as well, to be honest. I thought he defended well and stood up to a lot of the tests that Alkmaar gave them. Who else did I think was good? Ashley Barnes, I thought had a massive impact. Got booked in the 42nd minute for dissent, which was quite amusing and a sign of his character. He's on it at the referee all the time. Onel Hernandez played with a little bit of edge. The second half, to be honest, was a bit of a non-event. It descended pretty quickly into that pre-season game where Norwich were under stress, Alkmaar were under stress, and the game kind of amounted to not much. But that first half I thought was really interesting, quite an entertaining game to watch, but not really one that shifted my concerns or my feelings really that significantly. But it's good to see an amping up of the opposition. Alkmaar last night, they had some players that I'm sure will be recognisable to people. Matt Ryan, who made an excellent save from John Rowe in the first half, formerly of Arsenal and Brighton. Jordy Classy in midfield, who was at Southampton. I think he's played for some Dutch. I might even have been at Ajax I think he was at Ajax for a little while. Pavlidis up front, big lad, and I thought Shane Duffy and Ben Gibson did a good job of marshalling him. Again, not really someone who I felt threatened. They're kind of threatened them in behind, and I think that's a test that I would like to see them given. But yeah, this was a real amping up, I think, in terms of opposition, and by and large, competitively, Norwich stood up to it, with the caveats that I would add. And I would also throw in that it wasn't a complete Alkmaar 11 as in strongest terms. I think we saw kind of a mix and match of players. There were some young players in there as well, and obviously Ruben van Bommel, 18, son of Mark van Bommel, with the goal. So yeah, really interesting night. I think David Wagner would have taken a lot from it in terms of his game model and seen where Norwich are on that front. But I get why the feeling is where it is at the moment. You can see it, you can sense it, and I guess it's going to be interesting to see how Norwich deal with that, because it can be difficult going into a season, particularly with what we encountered last year. Have they changed enough of the squad to make it not a problem? I'm not sure. I keep going back to a quote that Stuart Webber gave, I think, to us in the post-match media that he did, saying that maybe in hindsight he didn't change the squad enough. He needs to make sure that those feelings don't exist come the end of come the end of the summer. As I said, I can foresee Norwich doing a winger. I then think anything else is kind of hinging on departures, if I'm completely honest. But we'll see how it pans out. Things are very fluid and change pretty rapidly, and something can pop up from nowhere that piques a club's interest. But that quietness that you're sensing is pretty real, to be honest. It's very difficult to get anything tangible at the moment in terms of transfer lines, but again, with the caveat that things move very quickly. So I'm recording this on Thursday morning. So David Wagner said he was optimistic that Norwich would get one in before Austria. They fly to Austria tomorrow. That is looking very, very unlikely. So we'll see. We will be in Austria as we have been in Germany and here at the Netherlands as well. I promise this is Amsterdam. It does just look like a generic hotel room, granted. But yeah, we're not a million miles away from Schiphol Airport, so it's been another good trip. We fly home tonight, and then we're back out to Austria on Monday for the game against Toulouse next Tuesday, which is going to be split into 3 40-minute segments, essentially to allow players to play 80 minutes. A lot of Norwich players, some actually played the entirety of the game. So Ben Gibson, I think, did. Some played 60 minutes, some played 80 minutes, so those are a real differential. Some played 15 off the bench. So yeah, an interesting night, a useful night. I'm not really sure I've learned anything or maybe even told you anything new particularly, but it was... yeah, it was the type of game that I think will suit Norwich City and will suit Norwich City into the Championship as well. Apologies again for this being slightly late. To make up for it, there is going to be... I've basically done a vlog of our trip from to the Netherlands yesterday that started at 6:30 in the morning from Norwich train station and ended after midnight here in this very hotel room. So that will be out at some point very soon. We've obviously got chats with David Wagner and Dimi Yanulis as well on our channel for you to watch. And of course, I'll be doing a verdict after Toulouse in Kufstein. That should be okay because the time shouldn't be as much of an issue. So yeah, looking forward to that. Thank you very much for watching and for all of your support in these videos. Make sure you're subscribed if you haven't already. We're going to be recording a podcast on Friday. We're going to be doing that in a slightly different location, not here, obviously, because we're flying back tonight. So yeah, keep your eyes peeled for that. Thank you for your support. Thank you to Carroll Healthcare for their support, and we'll see you again very soon.